Ray, what do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
Hey guys, we're excited to announce that the YouAreCreators podcast is brought to you by GoDaddy. GoDaddy is an awesome site where you can find the right name for your business. Hundreds of new domain names are available now, including .photography, .estate, and .guru. Create your website with GoDaddy's easy-to-use website builder. Even run your business anytime, anywhere with Microsoft 365 from GoDaddy. Visit GoDaddy.com and enter promo code CREATOR28 to save 28% on your order. Some limitations apply. See website for details.
This is Justin and Erica from YouAreCreators, and we have a special guest, Mr. George Philogene. Welcome, George.
Welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so just to give the listeners a little background on who George is, George has a master's degree in communication policies. His specialties are in strength-based consulting and coaching and helping people recognize their gifts. In addition, George also provides somatic services that help people reach their optimal flow state, helping them tap into their reserved abilities that are dormant in their subconscious. George is also the co-founder of the Superflow Coaching Network, where he also serves as a lead Superflow coach. Thank you so much for being here with us today, George.
Oh, thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you.
Now, George, how did you first get started with life coaching, and where does your methods come from?
I was working with, we call them public sector. I think you might call them government employees in the UK, and I was doing a lot of work with nurses and nursing professionals and health professionals and some first responders. And most of the work I did was strength-based coaching. So strength-based, that is really about identifying what's working well in the group and discovering what a group is really good at. So by building on their strengths, they become more and more capable of resolving complex and more advanced challenges. Working with a lot of first responders, you call them first responders, we call them paramedics or ambulance workers, I began to notice that some of them were experiencing high levels of stress, and I began to offer independent coaching services around how they could manage stress. And those are mostly using techniques that I learned from sports. I spent some time doing martial arts and Russian arts, and also techniques I learned from yoga and other disciplines. So I took a very transcultural approach to working with stress. And from there began the techniques that have evolved into what we call superflow.
Okay, so can you explain to us what superflow coaching is?
Sure. There's a lot of work out there on flow state, and there's some excellent practitioners of flow yoga and flow state work for fitness. What superflow does is it goes a little bit beyond flow state, and it's a little bit different from flow state. Whereas normal flow state coaching is based in science, and it has a benchmark or a system of measuring when you're in an optimal state for performing. What superflow does is it helps the person get back to their natural state of grace. It's a lot about helping a person to relax, get to what might be called a playful or more natural way of working. And from that natural way of working, I do a lot of work with what's called peripheral vision. So getting the eyes to look out of what's called the cones of the eyes. And in that way, they begin to relax. They access their relaxed nature. And they begin to start noticing things out of the corner of their eyes that are like little opportunities. And that's one of the things I do a lot with clients. So by getting them to notice little opportunities, they become a little bit more lucky. And that's where the superflow or the normal flow moves into superflow. So if normal flow is optimal well-being, engagement, enjoyment, and skill, superflow is also noticing opportunities, taking advantage of them, and becoming a lot more lucky.
Okay. Now, Abraham Hicks, she talks about the flow often. And she talks about being in the vortex.
Right.
Is that similar to your teaching as well?
Abraham Hicks' work and mine are coming from a slightly different place. Where my work is slightly different is that I'm working a lot with getting people to access their subconscious mind and get into a state of peaceful coexistence with their subconscious mind. That subconscious mind, or you can use the word inner self or greater self or higher self, that subconscious mind has a really, really intimate relationship with the environment that it exists in. And that's what enables the person to tap into the vortex and start to identify those multiple possibilities that are there that they might be just filtering out. And then, as I said before, they get more lucky and they find more opportunities and they're able to see possibilities where they saw limits.
So similar to the law of attraction almost, by looking for opportunities, you seem to attract them more. Yes,
and the key is to actually access the peripheral vision. As it's in the peripheral vision, forces the body to relax. It's just a natural way in which the body is wired. It gets you out of narrowing the gaze and becoming a bit more narrowly focused or stressed. And then from those two positions, it becomes possible to notice more opportunities. I also did a lot of work, because my work is very transcultural. So what I do and what people in Superflow and the other parts of the community are doing are bringing elements from different cultures and looking at the assumptions behind those elements and then blending them together to enable people to take the benefit from them. So in addition to the work that Hicks and Law of Attraction has done, and it builds on their work, I do a lot of work with what you probably know of as inner smile. So by working with inner smile and the thymus, the heart area, it's possible to help people to neutralize negative emotion and negative self-talk. There's the negative self-talk that can block a lot of things. And from that positive feeling, more opportunities emerge and there are more connections. Then normally with clients that I work with, and if there's anybody out there that can try these techniques as well, that they might want to guide, I help them to drop their breathing to that little point in the center of gravity, just 3 fingertips below the belly button, so that they become centered in that space. And that's extremely useful when you can't immediately escape a situation. You may have a job that you don't particularly enjoy doing, you may be in a situation that you can't leave immediately, and by centering the weight there, you get more guts and you get more endurance. So there's 3 different things that are going on: identifying opportunities, challenging and transforming the negative into the positive, and gaining some sense of endurance if a situation won't change immediately. And those are 3 elements of how Superflow works with stress. There's a 4th element, which I could go into in a bit later.
Okay. So what exactly is flow state science?
So flow state science is mostly coming from sports psychology, and it's a scientific approach to ideas of engagement, being actively involved in what you're doing. A high level of skill is normally required before you reach flow state, and then the natural ability of the body takes over, and there's a sense of bliss or euphoria that can come with that. Superflow is slightly different because we're also bringing in the notion of intentionality and increased luck or opportunity, which normal science discredits. Normal science would say if you're in flow state and you get lucky, it's just because you're noticing the things that you're more lucky about. And of course, we could look at it the other way and say, if you're noticing more things you're lucky about and you get luckier, then can you notice even more?
Exactly.
Okay, so how can we use the flow to reduce stress in our lives?
It's a really good question, and the interesting way to look at it is the other way around. Reduce the stress to access the flow. So with stress reduction is really interesting, and this is the thing I wanted to come to earlier. The 4th key principle of stress reduction, which is what's unique to the way in which Superflow works and which is really useful for the people who want to work with that particular model, is the number 1 cause of stress that I've identified with most of the people that I've worked with and with other trainers. The number 1 causes of stress are not really physiological. It's not about breathing or smoking and all the other elements that people can link to stress. Those are secondary effects. The number 1 cause of stress that seems to be present or prevalent with people we work with is a disconnection between your internal values and the values of the environment that you're based in.
Okay.
In other words, many people are put in a situation where they're working in an environment that is very, very hostile to their internal values.
Right, exactly.
And this is a really key thing. So a lot of the work that we do with Superflow is about purpose, identifying your core values and purpose. And we have a model called 3PR, which we can work through with anybody who contacts us. And that's purpose, performance, process, resource. Sounds complicated, but the key thing that happens there, if you're a self-employed person, if you decide to jump out of the existing ways of working and really go it alone and pioneer. It's really important to identify the values that drive you, link them to the service that you provide, and most important of all, create your own performance indicators. We inherit performance indicators from banks. We inherit performance indicators from other business gurus. However, when you create your own service that fulfills your clients, you have different values. Those values have to be built into the way that you assess performance. By identifying your values' purpose, you can then find ways in which you can measure your own performance. And that greatly reduces stress because you see that you're acting in alignment with your values. Not necessarily the values of your bank manager, your family, your parents, people in your community, but the values that drive the service that you wish to provide. And then from there, it becomes a lot easier to access flow state. And from the flow state, you find more opportunities and more support for the community of people that are magnetized to those values.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome, George. Now, everybody gets writer's block. Okay. How can we enhance our creativity using your flow method?
So relaxation is really important. Identifying the values and the reasons that you want to write are really important. What would the message that you have to say? Accessing states of restfulness. So there's specific techniques, again, that we can work with, which access states of restfulness. And one of the techniques that we use a lot are visualization of light, specifically sky blue light. Now, what does that do? Light is a vibration, but also certain colors of light have an influence on the brain and enable the brain to react differently, and they also focus the mind. So the sky blue light tends to cool the system down when the system is overheating and when the brain is too active. And it also enables the person to focus their mind single-mindedly on one topic. Normally, when the brain is stressed, you have 18 thoughts repeating themselves over 24 hours. I don't know if you know that kind of loop, like the same thought going over. And this is one of the ways in which it's possible to break the pattern. On the actual website, the Superflow coaching website, there's a lot about being consciously creative. So just affirm into yourself that I'm conscious of my creative abilities. I'm conscious of the creativity around me. Helps you to notice a lot more creativity in your environment and in yourself. And that can really break blocks, whether they're writer's blocks or design blocks or service blocks.
Okay. So one of your specialties is helping people recognize their strengths.
Yeah.
How can we tap into those latent talents that are hidden in our subconscious mind?
Okay, so that's two separate things. Strengths-based coaching is a lot about what's working, what do I do well. Give me the examples of the best things that you've experienced in terms of delivering the broadcast that you do. Who are the best people that you've met, that you've had the most interesting conversations with? Noticing those moments that have really, really worked enables more of those moments to happen. Accessing reserved human abilities is slightly different. Accessing reserved human abilities has got two elements built into it. There's a physical reference point, which is a relaxation of the body and the muscles. There's a psychophysical reference point, which is about getting into a state of peaceful quietness with your own subconscious, or making friends with your subconscious. Because once that dialogue is in place, once you're able to relax and make friends with your subconscious and say, well, what is it that I'm not sure about? What is it that you know that I don't know? Because the subconscious notices a lot of things that your conscious mind doesn't know. Then you start accessing the reserve. Then there's a metaphysical reference point, which is more challenging to achieve, but it's a state of serenity and liking or enjoyment or kindness towards the people in your environment and your environment as a whole. Those three elements in harmony, physical, psychophysical, metaphysical, immediately begin to access the reserved human abilities. There are techniques of breathing that can be used for that, but you can either approach it through values, how you feel with other people, how you feel about peace, what serenity means to you, or you can approach it through direct technique, various forms of breathing, movement, and relaxation that will help you access those states.
Okay. Now, money, wealth, abundance.
Money, yeah.
Yes, money's good. how can we draw more wealth in our life?
It's a really interesting question. I've done some writing on wealth. I believe you read some of the writing I've done on wealth. It's really interesting. In fact, today I was with some traders. I'm lucky enough to work with some neurofeedback experts. Neurofeedback being a science of assessing brainwaves and peak performance, who work a lot with programmers. And what these programmers do basically is they take all the raw data of all the business that's going on in the world, and they transform it into those little flow charts that you see traders use so they can decide if they're going to buy or sell. Very, very, very high concentration type of work. And we were just talking about this issue of what wealth is. And really, we're just looking at two different things. The first thing is, in terms of markets and the practical side of wealth, is that when you're looking at anything, you're going to have a difference about the value that you hold for that thing and the value your client holds for that thing, but you want an agreement on price. So everything that you trade in, whether it's selling hypnosis, buying a carpet, selling the stocks and trades, about how much you value a service, how much you're prepared, what price you're prepared to pay for it, and then reaching that agreement. That's a really key element. The second key element is managing the emotional state, because people are going to tell you all kinds of things about what that thing is worth, what you should pay for it. And you just have to keep the line, hold the line. And so a lot of the work that I do with wealth is about recognizing what it is that you value, what you're prepared to pay for something, what you think it's worth, holding that position regardless of what other people tell you. So, for example, if you believe that your service is worth $300 an hour and you have the evidence that supports that claim, then you just charge the $300 whatever people are going to tell you. You hold the line. The second element is looking at how you can access information. So one element is very, very hard systems, like you've got the numbers, you've got the evidence, you stick to your guns. The second is very, very soft. And the soft element is about recognizing the information that's around you. And a lot of the work that we do with that is, again, to do with light. And it's to do with the perception of light. When you look at something, does it feel dimmer or does it feel very clear? Both of these things, if you can train yourself these senses very acutely, will tell you whether you want to invest or something or not. They're little subtle feelings you get when you meet people that just tell you if you really get a good energy from them or not so good. And that can make the big difference. Sorry, I'm giving you very long answers. I'm sorry about that.
I like that.
Answers, yeah.
You know what? Yeah, that's awesome.
It's very practical.
Okay, so do you believe that we actually create our reality, George?
Do I believe that we actually create our reality? I think at the moment my perception is that it's a lot to do with probabilities. I think that before an event happens, there are many, many, many different outcomes. And your mental frame, at the moment you take action, really determines the kind of outcomes that are most likely. And there needs to be a congruence, a link, a direct link between your internal dialogue, your internal values, and your external actions. Once that link is there, and you can use light, you can use visualization, there are a number of other superflow techniques, the probabilities tend to flow in your favor. But quite often there's a disconnection between the internal values. Do I really believe that giving this person this mortgage is going to make their life better? Do I really believe that this insurance package is the best insurance package? If you're a salesman, you can make yourself believe it. It's not quite as strong as actually believing. And this is something you train yourself to do when you listen, when you use super modalities, as it will just tell you, I'm not quite sure if I really want to buy at this price, because I don't pick up something that I really need to pick up, which is certainty.
Okay, so George, how would you say we could improve our self-confidence and decision-making?
Okay, your self-confidence and decision-making, it's so much of the work I do with people is about recognizing what they're really good at. You know, even though America is a very affirming society, I don't know if it's true for you, but I find a lot of people just don't praise what they do well often enough. They're quick to find where the fault is. It might be something to do with the way in which people are employed, that if we praised everybody for what they did well, we'd have to pay them more. And then, so the relationship that you have with a coach is different to a relationship you have with your line manager, because the coach is really on your side going, oh, you took a pounding there, but actually you're really good at this and this and this and this. So that's a really good place to start, recognizing what you're really good at. And the second thing is very, very clarity of outcome. Being really, really clear and precise about what you want rather than what you don't want. Because that's going to make sure that you're going to pound away until you get what you want. And many people that I deal with don't really know what they want. And that again goes back to purpose, because nobody's really asked them, what's the most important stuff to you? What are the values that drive you? What makes you want to get up in the day? What are the 10 things you think would really make the world a better place? Once you begin to identify those things and you link them to what you want to achieve, then it's really, really easy to, I like the American word for it, express resolve.
Awesome, George. Okay, so what is strength-based coaching and consulting, George?
Strength-based coaching and consulting, it's a multidisciplinary. My training, in fact, my postgraduate research, is mostly in a discipline called appreciative inquiry, which is discovering what is outstanding with any organization or team. It's a lot of solution-focused coaching, which is about what do you want and what resources, skills, and abilities have you got. And from NLP, which I did my training in as well, in fact, I'm an NLP trainer, a lot is about what are your inner resources. So strengths-based coaching is identifying your strengths and identifying what appear to be your weaknesses and using them for leverage. Because even something that you think is a weakness is a potential asset. So your perception of yourself might be, I am unable to do X because. And that's just a description, and there are ways in which you can break that description and then utilize what used to be a limit. So, for example, in the book, I haven't really told you any stories that it's gone fact. But in the book, there's an amazing guy that I used to know who's a Rastafarian, and he's a master praying mantis kung fu. I think there's a little bit of praying mantis kung fu in Enter the Dragon, but basically it's movement of an insect. And he was really, really poor. When I knew him first, he was scrimped and saved and gone on this NLP and other training course. And basically, he just couldn't put two pennies together. Then one day, he just turned up, took off the tracksuit, and got rid of the dreads and wore a suit. And I could imagine people were saying, you've sold out. What's going on? What happened to the Rastafarian consciousness? What's happening? Well, I met him a few years later, and he'd become a very, very successful trainer. And he said something to me that I found quite profound. He said, I had been taught that if you say what's not possible, this is not possible, you make something impossible. And I'd taken the idea that I'm a Rastafarian and linked it to the word impossible. It's impossible for a Rasta man to get a job. It's impossible for people to be straight with me. It's impossible for me to make it anywhere in my life. When I cut off my dreads, it didn't stop me being a Rastafarian. It stopped people perceiving me as a Rastafarian.
I like that. I like that, George. You know, I like you, George.
Okay, so George, can you tell us a little bit more about your book? Can you tell us, just the basics, how you came up with the book, where you got some of the wisdom and the knowledge from for the book?
I can do. And another interesting thing about this Rastafarian and about weaknesses, because this is also connected to the book and it's connected to the question that you'd asked earlier about how you find your strengths. The Rastafarian made his money because he took his Rastaman consciousness and applied it to business. He had ideas about life that it didn't make any difference to him whether he lived on a council estate, whether he lived in a block with 50 cents, or whether he lived in a really big mansion which had everything that he could possibly want. That made him really, really objective when it came to dealing with business and business proposals. So here was a guy who really hadn't got very much money, but had a different, detached attitude to money, and used that detachment to enable himself to leverage an opportunity. And there's so many people who can do that. So that was an interesting element. The book itself, Swengali, which is available on Amazon Kindle, and it's also available through Lulu.com, under the name Romulus, I believe, the founder of the Roman Empire. It's really a connection of all the most interesting people that I've ever met in my life. I just sat back and thought, You know, I've met some really, really interesting charismatic people who have applied their charisma to the business of influence, business of healing, business of generating wealth, the business of attraction. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if I just wrote up about this? Because so many people don't believe that they can do things with their life. But if they see that ordinary people are just living in this kind of fantastic way and able to do amazing things, it might inspire them. They might take elements from each person. So each story, each incident, each person that's written about is a real person. Names have been changed because they're private people, and locations have been changed. And I really tried to document what is the impact of charisma, what are the secrets of charismatic influence, how can you apply charisma to influence, wealth, health, and attraction. Some of the book is quite dark, I must admit, and I apologize in advance to the readers, but I've tried as honestly as possible to show what it's like to live the Abraham life, what it's like to live the miraculous life in the modern world, with all the challenges and difficulties and moral complexes that throws up. And that's really what that book is about. It's an inspiration for people who want to try and live differently and want to exercise some influence over the environment and themselves.
Okay.
You know, your book, it has so much ancient wisdom in there. I mean, seriously, it's very deep. And how many books did you have to read to actually write this book? Because, like, you kind of grab every culture and blend it in this one book.
The book covers people from different cultures. I think the two elements you haven't read, the first element covers some Venezuelan shaman that I met. Because I'm of a Caribbean origin, I had some time which I was able to spend in Venezuela. And the second part of the book, I think, describes some work that I'd done when I was really involved with Russian sports science. I think the third part is the wealth part, which is mostly Persian Sufism. And the fourth part is Tibetan Buddhism. It's not so much about book knowledge. I don't think anything like this is about book knowledge. It's about an interest in people and what they've got to say, and a desire to really follow up whatever they have to say as it piques you, as they offer you something that really provokes you and makes you want to look at the world differently. The one thing I'd say about the book, for those people who would like to read it, is that the book itself describes a number of people who are able to live with an almost medieval mindset in the modern world. And it shows that ancient wisdom still applies today.
Right.
But I didn't read that much for it. It's really about listening to conversations and following the pointers that people gave me.
Okay. Okay, George, can you tell us some of the current projects you're working on? I know you mentioned the website. If you can just tell us a little bit more about that. And just whatever else you're working on right now.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I'm working on. The Swengali project is I would like to be a big project, and I'd like to offer a proposal for your readers. If they want to visit my Superflow's coaching site, if they're prepared to send me a little 200-word story about the most charismatic person they've met and how it's changed their life, I'm just going to at random send that person a free copy of the book signed. If they like to,
okay, perfect.
They might enjoy that. So
wonderful.
I'm always happy to collect stories. That's my hobby.
I love stories as well, George.
Can you share that website with us one more time, please, George?
www.superflowcoaching.com.
Okay, and where can we find the book?
The book can be found on Amazon Kindle as Swengali Romulus, Romulus, and it can also be found on lulu.com, lulu.com, Swengali Romulus.
Okay, perfect. And we are going to put that information down in the information box, okay, of this video.
So I'm going to provoke the people who listen to this show. I mean, the Superflow coaching community is a vision. It's an ideal and it's an aspiration. It will be becoming more and more of a technical website over the next couple of weeks, and I'm looking forward to any feedback on this. But the idea is to create a small membership community that would enable the members to have discounted coaching and support, and would eventually enable us to do more research and provide the opportunity for anybody, especially people who are in a difficult situation, and just go, I can't afford to go to the best person. I can't afford to pay Coach George's normal rate, to have a discounted service. So it'll be like a for-profit, but run like a not-for-profit, where the members are able to take advantage of the service. That's the first thing we're working on. Second project we're working on is a Napoleon Hill project. So a lot of people have got Gathering Dust on their desk, Think and Grow Rich. It's a brilliant book. It hasn't really been engaged with using all the modern things that we know from Esther and Abraham, all the modern things we know from NLP. And we're planning to do a webinar and a series of support materials that just guide people through Think and Grow Rich and enable them to take advantage of it. And the reason behind this is very simple. You know, and I know, and all three of us know, America and Britain are going through deep recession. It's not easy for Americans. We know that Carnegie and we know that Napoleon Hill's techniques help people survive the last deep recession, which was worse than this one because people literally couldn't eat. At least we know that there is food available. And I think it's time to bring those techniques back into service, to bring those elements of American culture that have been forgotten back to the foreground so that people can actually adapt and survive and thrive in a really, really difficult time. And that's part of the Superflow project. It's a community. It's to make sure that we have the resources to overcome. So those are the two major projects that are coming up in the short term. The first one being to create a community that offers the stress flow. The second one to do the Think and Grow Rich. And then the third project is really, really exciting for me, and it's going to take some time. But there's a whole team of us, one who does neural feedback, another one is a very intuitive coach, actually looking at what the Indians call the siddhis or the talents, and looking at developing a very, very, very simple program that's pretty low cost that will enable people to access the reserve human abilities at will without needing to belong to any denomination or any organization. And that's fairly straightforward. We're modeling that right now.
Perfect, George. You know, thank you so much for being on You Are Creators. Really,
thank you. We really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
It's very kind. I must give a plug to my dear friend Maria DeMarcos, because without her I would not have heard about you, and she's a really lovely person. So
she is. We love Maria.
Awesome.
But I have to give thanks to the people who've introduced us.
This is Justin and Erica from You Are Creators, and we support your dreams.